politics. This is the show where you can ask anything about politics that you like, regardless of how simple or complicated or right wing or left wing your question is, and you will get a sincere and good faith response. There's no fighting on this show, there's no roasting, there's no debating. This is just for answering your good faith questions about politics. And everybody is welcome here, whether you are a Republican, a Democrat, something in between, or something on the outskirts. Everybody is welcome. You don't have to worry about what kind of question you're asking. You don't have to worry about, if I ask this question, everybody's going to think I'm a MAGA person or everybody's going to think I'm a libtard person. There's no judgments here. There's no roasting. There's no debating. So everybody is welcome. Ask your questions however you like, however many you like, however simple or complicated you like, and you will get a good faith answer. I don't believe in debating. I think debates are unproductive and stupid. I am just here to answer your good faith questions, regardless of if we agree or don't agree. I think we should be able to come to some sort of shared understanding about what's going on in the world. What's up, D. Scott? What's up, JP? Great to see you again. And no, I did not see the POTUS speech. I get annoyed when I have to listen to that dude talk. So, yeah, any questions about politics, just put them in the chat. Everybody is welcome here, Republican, Democrat, everything in between, and everything on the outskirts. No such thing as a dumb question. I don't believe in making fun of people for, not knowing things or trying to learn new things. I'm also not going to judge you if you're a right-wing person or a left-wing person. So you can ask anything that you like, and you will get a good faith answer in response. Yes, Fletch, I agree with that completely. So, yeah, let's see here. I know that politics is really weird these days. I know it's really difficult to try to figure out what's going on with all the misinformation and propaganda. So this is where you can ask all of your questions. Yeah, JP, 400, 600%. I'm getting paid to take my medication now. Authentically Her says, why MAGA breaking with Trump on his tweet about Reiner, but not his lies like last speech? I think that's a really good question, Authentically Her. It's like the Republican Party, elected politicians, the content creators and shit like that, they really do weirdly pick their battles where they're like, this is a little over the line. But then they just, they vote the way that Trump wants them to vote, and then they continue to support him regardless of how many times they do shit like this. So yeah, they're not going to call out his lies because those lies are potentially helpful to them. Yeah, it's a fucking, it's weird shit, and it's part of a million reasons why I don't think that people should vote for Republican parties. Mr. 22 says, bring me up for a debate. No, I don't debate people, Mr. 22. I only answer questions. If you have a question, you can put them in the chat, and I will answer it for you. Everybody is welcome here. John Selfridge, good to see you as well. I hope that your wife is doing okay in the hospital, John. And yeah, no need to spend any extra time with me if you got to go get your wife from the hospital. Okay. Evil Poutine says, which case of lawfare this term do you think was the worst? I don't know which. They're all like equally bad, I think. The Russiagate scandal, Jim Comey, Letitia James, Mark Kelly. Mark Kelly's probably like the stupidest one that he did, just because Mark Kelly is such a badass. It's like you're not gonna scare him, you know. Let's see here. Evil Gene says, nah, some are way worse. LOL. I guess it takes all kind. What do you think is the worst one, Evil Poutine? Jose Adon Torres says, look at space. Is there space within space, a between space, further out space? Just think political. What a weird thing to say, Jose. All right. Everybody is welcome here. Republican, Democrat, everything in between and on the outskirts. You will not get judged for your question. If your question makes it clear that you're a MAGA person, I'm not going to yell at you. I'm not going to call you names. I'm not going to try to fight with you. I'm just going to answer your question in a good faith and honest way. If you have a question that you've always wanted to ask, but you're worried that it would make you seem like more of a lefty than you actually are, you don't have to worry about that at all. Evil Poutine says the Kilmar Garcia case is horrible. You know what, Evil Poutine? I completely fucking agree with you there. Where everybody else is concerned, you are at least dealing with somebody who has a modicum of power and is used to being in the public spotlight. This is just a fucking dude. This is just a fucking dude who is doing his shit the right way, not breaking any laws, just, being a valuable member of his community, and the Trump administration will not stop trying to send him to a concentration camp. It's fucking disgusting. I completely agree with you there. Shamalama Ding Dong says, well, ain't you just the cutest patootie in all the land? Ah, stop. You're going to make me blush. Drew 8 says, I wonder why Bongino is the only one to get out in front and cut ties. What is the grip 47 has? I mean, ask Bubba about his grip. That was a stupid joke. Sorry about that. Yeah. So I think Bongino is leaving as a scapegoat. I think that he's a sacrificial lamb. Like people are calling for the resignations of Patel and Hegseth and Pam Bondi and shit like that. And Trump likes to hold on to people that everybody hates as like a sign of power. And Dan Bongino maybe feels like, I don't know, the easiest person to let go of, maybe like the craziest kook of the bunch. It's also possible that they need somebody to blame for not releasing the e-files today. And so potentially they'll be like, Bongino's the only one who has the password to the external hard drive. And so we're just going to wait for him to come back, and he's on Christmas vacation. So once he gets back from Tahiti, then I promise you we will release the files. Kenneth Eckhart says, why? So you can give liberal comments? No, I answer questions honestly and sincerely, Kenneth. If you think that me being a progressive Democrat makes me not a valuable voice to hear, then, you're free to go. Dragon says the $1,776 is not what people think. Yeah, it is literally coming from their own housing budget. Like Donald Trump is stealing money from the veterans housing, active military housing budget to give them a bonus. It's so fucking stupid. Kenneth Eckert says, see, told you. I mean, all I'm doing is reporting the news here, man. Do you think anything that I said was inaccurate, Kenneth? Because you can leave. Like, you can leave whenever you like. Ariel Patrick says, as a far left, I just wish the Dems could work on their messaging. Ariel, I have a couple of ideas that I would love to put in your noodle, specifically about the idea of democratic messaging. Are you still here? Do you want to get into it? Because I have some thoughts for you. Just let me know. Okay. Zach Sparks says, Hibachi sounds good. That is not a question about politics. Drew 8 says, who's next for AG? Part 2 to that, next administration say blue, will the AG go nuts as there's no limitations? I mean, I don't think the Democratic Party should be breaking the law and doing vindictive, lawfare the way that the Trump administration is. I just think that they should go after people that broke the law. And now the people in the Trump administration and Trump are actively breaking the law. So, that should be easy. The problem is that right-wing media is going to go crazy and say this is lawfare, so we are going to have to be part of the messaging strategy of making it clear, like, no, they broke the law. That's why it's happening here. Ariel says, I think we probably have different opinions on what that messaging should be. I mean, that's fine for us to have different opinions about what the messaging should be. What I would love to talk to you about, Ariel, is I do think that there are problems with the Democratic Party messaging, but I think that they're better at messaging than we give them credit for. And here's my argument for that. Let me know what you think about this, Ariel. So the Democratic Party has a lot of sort of like foundational disadvantages where both electoral politics and messaging is concerned. Because a lot of times messaging, how good or bad messaging is decided on whether or not those people won their elections. And so if they win the elections, we go, oh my God, they're messaging geniuses. And if they lose the elections, we go, oh, they're shitty at messaging. But let's look at the difference between messaging as a Republican versus messaging as a Democrat. When you're messaging as a Republican, you have a vast and unprecedented right-wing media machine that pushes your messages out there regardless of how stupid, inaccurate, or self-defeating, hypocritical they are. The Democratic Party has to work within whatever budget they have, which is less than what Republicans have. And additionally, they go through the mainstream media. Now, the mainstream media, because they are incentivized to appear bipartisan, they will often overhype negative stories about the Democratic Party and underhype negative stories about the Republican Party. So when the Democratic Party tries to put their message out there, it kind of gets drowned out by the mainstream media, sort of like both sidesing Washington, D.C. Additionally, the Republican Party is more of a monolith than the Democratic Party is, and it's a lot easier to coalesce around a message if you're just sort of like one big party of white Christian nationalists, as opposed to the Democratic Party, which is a whole bunch of little parties. Additionally, because the Democratic Party's platform is to do things and fix things, it's a lot harder to message around that because that's a lot more complicated. Where Republican messaging can just be Dems are bad, government is bad, let's get rid of government because it's standing in the way of us living our full and true lives. So yeah, let me know what you think about that. And sorry, I wanted to add one more thing, Ariel. Because the electoral systems are stacked against Democrats as well, meaning like the Electoral College, the Senate map, and partisan gerrymandering, they tend to win fewer elections than they should. And so that makes their messaging look worse because regardless of how savvy it was, you lose the election, we think that means that your messaging is bad. Now, conversely, when the Republican Party loses elections, people don't go around saying, oh, this is because their messaging was bad. We just kind of forget it. Like we hold the Republican Party to such a lower standard than the Democratic Party that when they do their fuck ups and weird messaging strategies, we don't then go, oh, look, they're terrible at messaging. What do you think about there, Ariel? Ariel says Republicans have shifted away from libertarian beliefs to more authoritarian. That's accurate, but what do you think about the things that I'm saying? Tom says you're wrong there. Republicans co-op a populist message, albeit they're not going to do populism. I mean, I kind of agree with that, but you're talking very specifically about like Donald Trump, who ran as a populist and governed as an oligarch in both of his terms. But Ted Cruz isn't out there messaging as a populist. Lindsey Graham isn't messaging as a populist. Yeah. And I would even argue that Trump's messaging leading into 2024 wasn't all that populist either. He talked about prices being out of control, but he also talked about he was going to tariff things, which would make it even more expensive. He told the fossil fuel industry that if they gave him $1 billion, he would cut their regulations. I don't know why we're not all screaming about that being a massive messaging fuck up, Rad Right Hans says, define populist. I guess that would be advocating for policies that are popular with the wide majority of Americans or policies that benefit a majority of Americans. Okay, let's see here. Ariel says, so we should shift to a freedom party, free to be who you are. Again, you're not really, oh, Ariel says, most of your complaints seem to be excuses, not really a plan to win the future. Ariel, I gotta say, it seems like you're kind of trying to start a fight here because I'm trying to start a dialogue with you. I'm like, what do you think of these ideas about how the deck is stacked against the Democratic Party? And you're like, you're making up excuses and not coming up with a plan to win the future. Like, I'm here telling you, like, there are things that we can do better. I'm just saying, I think that we consistently misjudge the Democratic Party as being worse than they are, and these are my reasons. I'm fine if you're like just not gonna hear that, like I guess that's your prerogative. I guess I was really hoping we could have a dialogue. Maybe you could acknowledge that some of the things I said was accurate, but maybe you disagree with the interpretations, stuff like that. Right, Hans says, I thought I was a Democrat, but I feel consistently let down. I guess I'd really like to sort of like pull on that thread, right, Hans. I thought I was a Democrat, but I feel consistently let down. I guess, yeah, tell me more about that, right, Hans. Ariel Patrick didn't say you're wrong, but it's not helpful. I do think it's helpful. I think that part of the messaging difficulty of being a Democrat is that no matter what you do, you get told that you are doing the wrong thing. Democrats are constantly being told that they are too far to the left, too far to the right, not doing enough, and doing too much. And if we can hone in on that and get that to be the reality instead of Dems are pathetic and feckless and they're terrible at messaging, maybe we can actually start to judge them by the same standards that we judge the Republicans. Maybe we can lower the bar for them a little bit. And then maybe suddenly everybody will start talking about how the Democratic messaging is okay as opposed to terrible. I'll tell you this also, it seems as though billionaire propaganda is specifically designed to make it seem like Democratic messaging is terrible. If you remember, the Harris campaign was campaigning with Liz Cheney for a while. And the messaging there was that Donald Trump is so bad that even this conservative Republican who disagrees with me on everything is still going to vote for me because of how bad Donald Trump is. But then that got chewed up and regurgitated and spit out into Kamala Harris is campaigning with Liz Cheney because they agree on policies, because Democrats are too far to the right, because Democrats are basically Republican light. Do you see how, no matter what Democrats say or do, the billionaire propaganda machine seems to find a way of making it seem like it was a bad move? Does that make sense to you, Ariel? Let me know what you think about that. Burak Review says, how do you feel about APAC? I feel the same way about APAC as I feel about every single extremely well-funded right-wing lobbying organization. APAC, Heritage, Federalist Society, they all fucking suck. We need some actual regulations around lobbying so that billionaires cannot just buy all of the governmental power that we have in the world. Okay, John says, do you think Trump putting his name on the Kennedy Center is legal? I mean, it's not technically legal, but like it's not changing the name of the building. But he might have the right to put letters on a building. Cruxel says, what do you think about the two-party system as a whole? I think it has its flaws. I think it gets blamed for more than it is responsible for. If we want to introduce more parties into the electoral process, we need ranked choice voting, and the Democratic Party is the only party that is open to it. Republicans are trying to make it illegal. Democrats are thinking about including it in their primaries. Ella says, do you think Trump can start a war bypassing Congress? So the answer is kind of yes and no, Ella. Like, technically he can't, but because the Republican Party is, just going along with whatever Donald Trump wants them to go along with, that means that they're not going to stand up to him. So he will potentially do shit that is war-y or escalatory, or even go full on declaring war on Venezuela. And the Republicans in Congress are not going to vote to rescind that or vote to rescind any of his war powers. I mean, just these strikes on the boat should be enough to wake up the Republican Congress to try to pass something to make it illegal for him to unilaterally declare war on Venezuela, but they're not doing it. All right, Kimberlina, great to see you again. Is someone making a list of all these things to undo? New Secretary of De-Trumpization. I mean, yeah, we gotta have a list going. We gotta have a running tally. Let's fucking make it happen. Okay, Average Joe says, if you had to guess how many days until Trump or Miller drops a hard R on live TV, if I said 365 days, would you take the over under? I think I'd probably take the under on that. But again, Average Joe, you don't like making predictions. Rids says, who blew up the Nord Stream pipelines? I don't know, and I don't think anybody does. Ivan Cisco says, it's disgusting how much Trump gets away with. It all started with the Gulf of Mexico. I think it started in 2015, 2016. David Persico says he's not bypassing Congress numbers-wise. He has the vote, so it doesn't matter if he's doing strikes on things coming to America. But they haven't passed a vote, though, David. So, we're not at war, which means that you're not allowed to just murder people in the middle of the ocean. So until Congress gives him that authority, even if he potentially has the votes, what he is doing is illegal. What he is doing is murder. Rid says, who do you think blew up the Nord Stream pipelines? I don't know, Russia? Let's see here. Red White Han says, have you seen the Katie Johnson deposition video? I have not. Stern says, what do you think about Trump's gardening Schedule 3 thing? It's interesting. It's not a policy that I disagree with at all. I think that we have, for a long time in this country, been using hyperbolic rhetoric to talk about the evils of gardening. And so I think it's the right move. It does appear like this is just more corruption. It feels like people in the legal gardening industry greased his palm, and so then he did it. It's also possible that this is the same kind of political calculation that he made by appointing RFK Jr. the Secretary of Health and Human Services, in that he thinks that people that like gardening will now thank him for this and vote for him in the future. He's a purely transactional president. He's giving the military 1,776 of their own dollars and hoping that means that they will vote for him. He gave everybody $2,000 in the middle of the pandemic, hoping that everybody would vote for him. Et cetera, et cetera. George Sermain says, what are your views on communism? I guess it depends on how you define communism. I define communism as workers owning the means of production. So any company that we have here in America that is employee owned, like Publix supermarkets or Bob's Red Mills, is communist. And those companies are great. And I think that sort of structure of employment can do a lot to eliminate income inequality. So I think we should be incentivizing more companies to become employee owned. Whatever dude says, I'd like to get my own dollars too. Trump for the win. I hope you're being sarcastic. Red Right Han says, what do you think is up with the East Wing? I think it's probably just what it is. I think he wanted to build a ballroom, and so he didn't give a shit about destroying the fucking White House to do it. And if you like read into the reporting on how that all is going, it seems like it's a big fucking clusterfuck, a giant waste of time and money. You know, when Americans are struggling to pay the bills, to get health care, to put food on the table, he's busy fucking around with a ballroom that's going to take more than fucking 8 years to build or some shit like that. It's so fucking stupid. It's a slap in the face to every struggling American, in my opinion. Okay, Muzz King, thank you so much for helping me reach my first gift goal of the day. Whatever dude says, he absolutely can blow up the boats. I mean, he can in the sense that he has, but he has no legal rationale for doing it. Jay says, are we cooked? We're not fully cooked, and what's important to recognize is that if people do the work, we can get uncooked. We're kind of medium well right now, but we can absolutely become rare, uncooked, if you like. Whatever dude says, not a war crime. Well, it's not really a war crime because we're not at war, but it's murder. It is murder. It is an illegal order that was followed by the military to do that. And whatever, dude, you're not asking questions, so you got to get out of here. Let's see here. George Surmain said, "Why we need workers' revolution? We need to take power." Completely agree with that, George Surname. Drew 8 says, "Twitch chat." Yeah, I also have chat over on Twitch. Cracked out Sox fan. Is that you, Tristan? Is that you, Ecuadorian? You can never. You're always changing your screen names. It's so funny. Okay, how do you think 47 will circumvent the release of the files since it's a law now as compared to past congressional subpoenas? And yes, I do read Twitch chat. Is that you, Drew 8? Are you cracked out Sox fan? You're in both places? That's pretty fun. Okay, yeah, I thought that was my buddy Tristan, who has a very similar profile picture to you. So yeah, I'm really curious about the mechanism by which we will be able to uphold that law that information is supposed to be released, because the DOJ has already come out and said it's not going to be released today, that they're not going to make the deadline. So who is then going to punish them? Who is then going to make them release that information? And I honestly have no fucking idea. And I think it's really important that we kind of come to this intersection where we've told them to do something. The Republicans, the Democrats, Donald Trump signed the fucking thing, and they still haven't done it. Where's the accountability? Like, where are the consequences for that, dereliction of duty? I think it's important. Retro Gamer, hello to you. Okay, Shin says, storm the Capitol if they do not release the files. I mean, all the people who stormed the Capitol on January 6th are out now, so if they're down for doing that, then they should fucking do that. Jay says, is there at least some benefit in Trump showing how poorly ineffective our system is at checks? I think so. I mean, this happened during the first term, but I don't know that Democrats had enough political power or time to address all of this. But what we discovered was that a lot of these norms and regulations that we had just sort of like assumed everybody would follow were sort of like mere suggestions if the Republican Party isn't going to hold their own accountable. And so, yeah, 100% we are looking at that. 100% we are staring down the barrel of, all right, we're definitely going to need to actually put some teeth on these laws so that future presidents cannot do this illegal shit that Donald Trump is doing. John Bradley says, limited scope of the warrants were for, at the time, going to be really disappointing. Not really sure what that means. Jay says, why do you think so many middle and lower class Americans are complicit with Trump's actions? It's a good question. I wonder what you mean by so many. Like the Republican Party and Donald Trump are not popular. People don't necessarily like them. The Democratic Party isn't all that popular either, but at least the Democratic Party has the policies that people actually want. So yeah, I think that if you are a lower income person, then it is likely that you cannot afford to get an education. Merry Christmas in advance. I'm paying $5,000. All right, you're out of here, Samson. Do not care for that kind of spamming, you know. Yeah. Jay says, true, but Democrat messaging is so bad. Leadership in the Democratic Party has to move on. I mean, I agree, but I was actually talking to Ariel about this earlier, that I think we judge Democratic messaging too harshly. Like, I think they're better at it than we give them credit for. If you did not hear that argument earlier, Jay, I'm happy to repeat it, because I do think that information is really important to solidify into people's noodles. Red Han says, what are the most harmful things to happen under Trump? Probably dismantling social safety net agencies, both here and abroad. Getting rid of USAID is going to make Americans less safe, both from, political violence and also, deadly diseases. That's probably it, I think. Stacking the Supreme Court with a bunch of fucking loyalists who just do his bidding, regardless of how illegal or inhumane it is. Tripling ICE's budgets, that's a whole fucking thing also. Right. Scrolling. Jay says, let me hear it. All right. So here's why I think Democrats are better at messaging than people give them credit for. Number one, the way that we judge messaging is whether or not they won the election. So, like, Republican messaging going into 24 was god fucking awful, but they won the election. So now everybody's saying, oh, they're geniuses. And because it's harder for Democrats to win elections because of things like the Electoral College, gerrymandering, and the Senate map, it does seem like we lose more elections than we should, ergo our messaging is terrible. But it's also harder to have a successful messaging campaign as a Democrat because we're a diverse coalition. It's easier to have a cohesive message when you are more of a monolith, like the way the Republican Party is. When you have a lot more money, it's easier to get your message out there. The Republican Party is consistently cutting regulations and taxes for the billionaire class, so the billionaires help them amplify their messages for them. The Republican Party has a massive and unprecedented right-wing propaganda machine in things like Fox News, right-wing talk radio, OAN, Breitbart, The Daily Wire, etc. And ergo, it makes it seem like they're messaging geniuses because those messages are able to break through in ways that Democrats don't have available to them. Additionally, the mainstream media, because they try to appear bipartisan, often overhype negative stories about Democrats and underhype negative stories about Republicans. And that is, intimately connected to the messaging struggle, where, Republicans can put out their messaging and it gets amplified by both right-wing media and centrist mainstream media. Democrats put out their messaging and all it sort of like has to fight for attention with the mainstream media, right-wing media, and the profit motive. There's just like a handful of things. I'm sure I'm forgetting some stuff, but yeah, that's my general take on why we are too harsh on Democratic messaging. Sophia, great to see you again, says, about the question you asked, Republicans support state/private level mental health initiatives instead of federal funding. I don't think that's accurate, Sophia. If you look at states that are controlled by Republicans versus Democrats, their mental health initiatives are vastly underfunded. They often will cut those initiatives so that they can give more tax breaks to billionaires and millionaires and giant corporations. Would you like me to send you some information on that, Sophia? Let me know. Shoot me a DM and I will send that to you. Sonia DeBoss says, how do I know if I'm left, Democrat, or progressive? I hate Trump and their ideas. I guess I would ask you which of the politicians that you vibe with most, Sonia, because they tend to fall in either the progressive or centrist camps. As far as like leftist versus progressive versus Democrat, that's a little bit more like, what do you call it? That's a little more squishy. Like there's a lot of overlap in those Venn diagrams. David 10 says, why do the people who don't know what a woman is always want to talk about mental health? I see what you're doing, David, and I guess if I want to answer this as honestly and sincerely as I can, what makes a woman is way more complicated than just having boobs, a vagina, and a uterus. if you talk to scientists about this, very smart people, scientists, they will tell you that it is way more complicated. And so, ergo, you want to make it seem like what a woman is some very simple thing, but science says otherwise. So, there you go. David. Your favorite Democrats? His opinion on Sydney Sweeney? I mean, she's pretty right wing aligned. She's very attractive. Obviously, she's fucking hilarious in the second season of Euphoria. Like her character, fucking slowly going insane over Jacob Elordi's character is like some of the funniest fucking television I've ever seen. But I don't like people who are part of the or not being vocally against what is obviously disastrous policy towards America. Okay, let's see here. I don't want to put my name. Says, how about the new regulations about Mary Jane going to affect? How's it going to affect truckers? I have no idea how it's going to affect truckers. J-Rock says, why do politicians still get free travel and other perks once they leave Parliament? Are you talking about in the UK? I have no idea what is up with UK, travel provisions, money for travel and stuff like that. Okay, let's see here. Average Joe says, regarding Democratic messaging on a scale ranging from physically painful to eye roll, how would you rate the messaging success of strongly worded letters? Obviously, that is a fucking nightmare. And I completely agree that we need to replace leadership in the Democratic Party. Like, I'm not saying that. I do think that I think we also need to recognize that the job of minority leader, both in the House and the Senate, is difficult. And I agree with you guys that we need to replace Hakeem Jeffries and Chuck Schumer ASAP. I also think it's a little, Monday morning quarterbacking to be looking at the things that these guys are doing, not knowing how difficult that job is, and going, what a bunch of fucking idiots. What a bunch of fucking stupid heads. I could do such a better job, shit like that. David Persico says, who do you feel has the best chance to win next for the Dems, not just the primary? I have no idea. Nobody does. I don't make those kind of political predictions. Additionally, I am trying to keep everybody focused on the midterms in 26 as opposed to the general election in 28. All right, Cracked Out Sox fan says, I have a poli-sci degree, and if there's one thing I've learned, the will of the people will not be detoured. I think it's going to take a unification, one reminiscent of post 9/11 camaraderie, non-violent, but a unified front against this tyrannical system. Also, go vote is the solution and should be the Dems' biggest push when the day comes. You're upset, go vote. Sorry for the long rant, but excited to hear your thoughts. No, that's okay, Cracked Out Sox fan. I have a lot of thoughts about that, Cracked Out Sox fan, because I agree. Like, I'm a voting nerd. I get very excited about voting statistics and data and shit like that. I love the idea of getting higher voter participation in America, but I would say that Democratic messaging will get excoriated no matter what it is. And so when you think about what should be the message of the Democratic Party going forward, you have to start thinking about how is the billionaire class going to weaponize this? How are they going to translate this into being bad? That will become the narrative. It 100% will become the narrative. The billionaire class has almost complete capture of our messaging environments. And so when you say that the winning push should be for the Democrats to say you're upset, go vote, that is going to be interpreted as it's not our responsibility to fix things, it's your responsibility to vote. And there are people who vote in every election because I remember this during the Dobbs fiasco, when I was like, you need to vote for more Democrats if you want to undo this. And I heard a lot of people saying, I already vote in every election. Don't just tell me to just go vote. Don't just tell me to go vote more because I already do that. What else? What else you got? My reaction to that is always, okay, well, 55% of the country doesn't vote. So maybe y'all can go find those people and get them to vote. Maybe that sounds like a pretty good idea. If you want more things to do, do that shit. So yeah, I'm down with unification. I do think that the will of the people will be detoured. I think you probably meant deterred, but we are watching the will of the people being detoured, like delayed. Like it's possible that things get so bad that people rise up and take power away from these shitty oligarchs. But it's also possible that people get lulled into complacency and scared, you know, and that voter suppression tactics make it impossible for people's votes to be counted accurately or fairly, you know. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff in there, man. I love your train of thought. I love your vibes. You know, let's keep this fucking party going. All right, I saw Sophia responded to something. Let's see here. With limits, if what limits, if any, do you think there should be on federal government involvement in private industries? That's a really good question, Sophia. But I noticed that you did not respond to the last thing that I said about conservative politicians not supporting state and private level mental health initiatives. Because I'd love to send you more information about that. Like, if I sent you data on that, do you think you could be convinced that that is an inaccurate belief that you have, Sophia? Let me know about that, and I'll answer your question. David says, no, that's why you lost. You focus on banks and foreign influence if you really want to win. And then he doesn't say anything else. I got to be honest, David, I don't really, I'm not really going to take all the things that you say all that seriously, considering what your first comment was to me. So yeah, I do not think the Democrats focus on banks and foreign influence. If you're worried about the influence of banks and foreign influence, I would take a look at fucking Donald Trump accepting a $500 million jet from the Qatari government, having a crypto coin where billionaires from any country, regardless of if they're adversarial or not, can funnel money to him in the form of bribes so that he can, I don't know, for example, give them a safety guarantee. They basically bought the entire U.S. military for $400 million, which is an unbelievable steal. You know what I mean? Oh, okay. Flamingo Mo says, do you think they will release the files today? They've already come out and said that they're not going to release the files today. Okay, that solar guy says, from an outside perspective, property prices in the U.S. don't really seem that bad. I mean, it depends on where you want to buy property, because it can get very bad. Let's see here. J Rock says, if the U.S. is united, why do different states have different laws from one another? We have we kind of have this mandate in America of, you know, a federal system, but with states' rights. So we give the states a little bit of latitude to do their own thing, but then we choose other places where things should not be left up to the states. Like where it's smart to not be left up to the states, we try to have laws that have to be federal as opposed to statewide. You know, and there are lawyers out there who can make very complicated and substantive cases for what should be and what should not be federal versus state. There are bad faith actors out there who argue for state control over issues just because they feel like they can get what they want easier that way. The Dobbs decision is a really good example of that. So yeah, man, good to see you too, Cracked Out fan. My regular schedule is Monday through Friday, starting at 11:30 a.m. Obviously, we're off for the holidays, but hopefully, we'll see you after Christmas. All right, Average Joe says, on that same scale, how would you rate the message sent by the party leaders being incapable of supporting a young Muslim over a leathery sexual harasser? Obviously, yes, that is terrible as well. Average Joe, which again is part of the reason why I think we need to get rid of leadership. We need to replace leadership. David Perisico says, it seems in 2024 Kamala failed to capture enough independence. What is the disconnect there? Like, what didn't they like about her, or what she'd bring, or what the party would bring? You know, David, that's a really interesting question. And I think there's a lot of different reasons for it. For example, and just to put this out there as well, I don't know if there is one sort of like prescriptive demographic that lost Democrats the election in 2024. Like you mentioned independence, but some people will mention that Republicans, Donald Trump, increased their vote share with minorities and women a little bit, and that was potentially connected to it. That voter participation in general was down in 2024, and so maybe that had something to do with it as well. My feeling on this is that, number one, Kamala Harris didn't have enough time to get her message out there. She only had 107 days. So obviously, you know, she has a really small window to introduce herself to the entire fucking country. But also, every politician that was in power in 2024 suffered some sort of electoral loss because of what we call an incumbency bias, meaning that everybody was suffering under, accelerated cost of living because of inflation that was caused by the Trump administration in 2020. But we were blaming whoever was in charge. And so whoever was in charge all around the globe, whether they were a left-wing government or right-wing government, suffered electoral losses because of this incumbency bias, because people were mad at just whoever was in charge, regardless of who actually caused the problems that they are suffering under. So yeah, I think that I think that's part. I think that is, if we want to find one overarching theme for why Democrats did poorly in 24, I would go with unprecedented billionaire political campaign contributions to the Republican Party and in-kind contributions like, Elon Musk's fucking unbelievably illegal messaging war, and also incumbency bias, which was just like this massive beast that, because Joe Biden was so incapacitated with age and decided to drop out of the race too late for anybody to do anything about it, it made it like an impossible beast to slay, basically. Sophia says, yes, I'd appreciate it if you sent me data on that. Also, red states spend less on everything, not just mental health. Yeah, absolutely, Sophia. I will send that to you. But let's do a hypothetical. Like, what if I send it to you and it's indisputable? Do you think that would change your mind? There's all this really interesting science about like how to actually get somebody to change their mind, Sophia, which is the reason why I'm bringing it up. Like, if I give somebody a piece of data that contradicts what they believe, oftentimes people will just assume that the data is fake or try to find some excuse for it. Do you have like a regular practice, Sophia, of trying to challenge your prior beliefs and seeing if you are writing off things that just disagree with the things that you believe? Let me know what you think about that, Sophia. Your favorite Democrat says, I meant what you think about City Sweeney's American Eagle ad. For me, it seems like it was just a bad look as opposed to being intentionally advocating for white supremacy. It was a direct reference to a Brooke Shields jeans ad that came out during like the 70s or 80s or some shit like that. So it seems like that's what they were referencing, as opposed to being like, we're going to do wink, wink, nudge, nudge, nudge at all the white supremacists to let them know that we're on their side. Oh, ready. Average Joe, I'll get to that one in a second. David Persico says, a lot of red have Fed funding imbalances. That is accurate. Girth Murphy says, how is it even a bad look at all? Well, it makes it seem like in a time period where we have accelerated the political power of white supremacists, that we are saying that white people with blue eyes and blonde hair have better genes than everybody else. That's why it was a bad look, Girth Murphy. Some people, that's a, Girth Murphy says, I think people are just soft as hell. That is fine if you think that, Girth Murphy. I'm just saying that if we look at everybody in America, there are people who believe that American Eagle and Sydney Sweeney were purposefully putting out white supremacist propaganda. And then there are people like yourself. And I'm saying that there's a bunch of different people in the middle there. People who think it was just a bad look, people who think it was intentional, people who think it was fine, people who think it was fine, but she should have apologized afterwards, So maybe, are you cool with America having all those different kinds of people in it? Because I am. I think it's fine for Americans to have a diversity of opinion on things. Woody Story says, why have 2.5 million people and 1 million businesses left California? Come on, why? Well, it's a very popular place to live, California, because we have a progressive tax structure, which means that there's more benefits for average Americans who are living in these states. The problem is that because everybody wants to live here, it makes it very expensive to live here. And that, plus the cost of living crisis that Donald Trump has put us in, means that we are not able to afford to live in the places that we want to live. And so people are going back to their parents' house, and those people tend to live in red states. As far as why businesses have left, is because we have a progressive tax structure in California, meaning that if you are wildly successful, you get taxed more than a small business or a poor person. And rich people are extremely greedy, and so they decided to move to Texas so they can pay less taxes, and then they don't have to worry about actually paying into things like public education and the fire department and shit like that. James Rush says, he said everything is better than it's ever been. Who said that? Woody Story says, nope, it's overtaxed and overregulated. Well, I disagree with that, Woody Story. Are you going to ask a question, or are you just going to say that I'm wrong? James Rush says, Trump says everything's better than it's ever been. Well, James, I think he's lying, right? Like, I think we're in agreement on this, man. Average Joe says, if you had an opportunity to watch the one doctor versus 20 RFK supporters on Jubilee, if anyone wants to know what cognitive dissonance and confirmation bias looks like in real time, give it a go. Yeah, I can't stand those Jubilee things. I hate watching people fight. I hate watching people yell and scream. You know, I'm sure there's good arguments in there from the doctor, but yeah, I just can't fucking stand watching that shit. Okay, let's see here. Sophia says, yes, if the data you sent me was accurate and contradicted my views, I changed my beliefs on this. All right, well, I can't wait to test out that, what do you call it? To test out that hypothesis, Sophia, because I did send you stuff about ICE detaining citizens and deporting people who have done no crimes. So did that change your opinion on that issue as well? Let me know. Mr. R says, then why is there such a wealth gap with that progressive tax system? For a lot of reasons, Mr. R. The rich people have the ability to find loopholes in tax laws that make it easy for them to not pay taxes. It's possible that the progressive tax structure is not punitive enough against the billionaire class. There are a lot of problems that California has, being such a large and populous state, that maybe we just need a little bit more money to solve those problems. And because we don't tax the rich enough, even if we tax them more, we're still not able to address all of those problems. You know, it's very complicated. No one's saying it's simple. But the fact of the matter is, if you are a rich person, you pay more in taxes in California than you do in Texas. But if you're a poor person, you pay more in taxes in Texas than you do in California. Alrighty, let's see here. Scrolling down to the bottom. Josie says, I love your lives. Just speaking facts, no rage bait, incredibly productive dialogue overall. Thank you, Josie. I appreciate you being here. And thank you, Ms. Weaver and David, for helping me reach I think this was my second gift goal of the day. Yeah, that seems about right. Second gift goal of the day. Okay, Lindsay Reed says, will Crockett win Texas? Nobody knows. Rena says, Sophia is far gone. Her reposts are very pro-ICE and loving Trump. Yes, Rena. I have not seen her reposts. But, we cannot deny that every time Sophia comes in here, she treats this live with respect. And so I am not going to judge her for the things that we have different in our political philosophies. This is exactly the kind of dialogue that I think that we should be having, even with people who are as diametrically opposed politically as people like you and I, Rena. All right, what's up, Willie? Good to see you again. Jay says, how do we change people's minds? That is a very good question, Jay. So number one, I would recommend you read a book called The Persuaders by Anand Giridharadas. There's a link to his book on my Discord under the recommendations thread. So easy way to go check that out. Short version is it takes a long time. You need to talk to people in real life. You need to listen more than you talk. You need to find common ground. You need to, meet them where they are. You have to appeal to them on an emotional level, because just using data and facts doesn't really change people's minds all that much. So yeah, it's it is a big project trying to change people's mind. Yes, Rena, I am glad that she's here also. Mr. R says, what do you think of the wealth tax California is trying to enact as a one-time tax? I actually don't know too much about that wealth tax, Mr. R, but I am for taxing the rich. So, whatever mechanism is being used, if it equals more money is being taken from the rich and being put into the government so that the government can make everybody's lives easier, I'm for it. Oy. Jay says, can I just send them a link to your page? You can. I would be happy for you to do that. I hope that I am convincing. I hope that I am that I am pushing the needle even a little bit. Maybe I can take somebody who's a full MAGA and turn them into like a centrist Republican, or maybe I can take a centrist or an undecided and turn them into a soft Democratic voter. Yeah, I think that the real juice in persuading people is people that already know and trust and love you. That's my guess. I mean, that's also the data. The data, I think, says that also, I think. If I'm remembering from the book The Persuaders, I'm pretty sure. Okay, Joe says, we're already taxing the rich, LOL. Not nearly enough, Joe, because there are people starving to death on the streets, and these motherfuckers have like multiple private jets, multiple golden yachts, multiple mega mansions, and that is not sustainable. That is not fair. They did not earn that. David, what's your stance on communism? I think it depends on how you define communism, David. If you define it like I define it, my view on communism is that it is a way of dealing with income inequality. If we give the workers the means of production, any employee-owned company is technically communism under that definition. That's the definition that I use. So why don't we have tax incentives for companies to be employee-owned? Why don't we legislate having workers on boards so that they can have more control over the decisions that a company makes? Seems pretty cool to me. What do you think, David? Average Joe says, if you watch that Jubilee, you will reconsider the possibility of persuading that crowd, LOL. Yeah, no, I'm sure. I think that if you put 20 people who all agree with each other in a room with one person that they all disagree with, I think those 20 people just coalesce around disagreeing with that guy. I think it doesn't help to have a big group of people who all agree with each other attacking one person. That's my theory. James Rush says, do you think I should focus on the interstate and highways to fight drug crimes? I don't think so, James. I don't really know. I don't really know how to fix what ICE is doing. It's like there's just so many things that are wrong with it. Yeah, I don't really know interstate and highways to fight drug crimes. No. I think they should be finding people who are here illegally, who are doing crimes. That's what they should be doing. Instead of just trying to round up like 1 million brown people a month, just go after people that are solving crimes. Because then you won't be bothering people who haven't done any crimes. And then you won't be detaining citizens who have done nothing wrong and legal residents who've done nothing wrong, shit like that. Intel Evils PC says, is political science a good major to pursue? If you're interested in it, I say go for it. It also is probably a good way to, if you want to have a career in politics, that could be a thing as well. Shiny Flytrap says, so DOJ refusing to release the files today. Do you think there'll be accountability? Well, I think it's going to be hard because the holidays are coming up. Everybody's going to be distracted. We'll see what happens, in the new year. Because, Mike Johnson sent the House home early, so they can't even do anything about that, David Persico says, does ISIS policy permit the deportation of citizens, or is it error on a small scale? That is a really good question, David. So I do not believe that ICE has the legal justification or cover for deporting U.S. citizens. But that does not mean that it's an error or an oversight necessarily. I think that where the rubber meets the road here is who is going to enforce ICE breaking the law? Who is going to enforce ICE behaving unconstitutionally and barbarically? Who is going to enforce ICE, violating people's civil liberties? And, that's an open question. Like, are we able to put enough pressure on Republicans in Congress to actually hold ICE accountable? Are we able to put enough pressure on giant corporations to cut ties with ICE and stop renting them vans and renting them cars and seating them at the restaurants? If Democrats win the midterms, there's a very good chance that we will see some accountability for that. But as ICE is operating under complete legal immunity, they're basically just doing whatever the fuck they want. Okay, Tishy says, everybody's entitled to due process, so aren't they breaking the law? They are, Tishy. You're 100% right about that. All right, your favorite Democrat says, Jared, do you think Sophia will still support an abortion ban if there was the 3 exceptions? We actually talked about that, and Sophia said that she The only exception that she believes is okay for an abortion is for the life and health of the mother. And I told her that there are women who are dead in red states because of that. And then we moved on to a different topic, interestingly enough. David Perisco says they have to operate, but also not be immune. I mean, there has to be accountability, yes. Misuse of authority, yes, David. We are in agreement here. Alrighty, we're almost at an hour, everybody. And says thoughts on corporatism, not corporatocracy. I'm not really sure what the difference would there be. No. Nat says, I genuinely believe ICE actively looks for non-good-looking people. I don't know if they do that, Nat. But I kind of see what you're getting at. Scrolling up. Jay says, what are your feelings on Vance? If Trump was no longer president, would you feel better or worse? I think Vance is less dangerous than Donald Trump because he does not have the charisma or the base of support that Donald Trump does. He is smarter than Donald Trump. He is more competent. He is younger. So he is definitely a threat. And given the sort of like wide range of executive powers that Trump has been able to wring out of Congress and the judiciary, he would be a very dangerous person to be in the White House. But I think that if we were going to fight against an administration that was trying to be authoritarian, I would much rather fight against a Vance administration than a Trump administration, because at least Vance can't, go out there and tell his supporters to go do violence against people that disagree with him or rule against him, because Vance doesn't have those people, I know Sophia likes Vance. Why I do not know, but I think she does. I think she said that in one of her first one of her first visits to our humble little live stream here. Okay, Lauren says, ism is the idea, ocracy is the action. Question mark? Like you're asking? I have no idea. Greg Monroe says, is The Rock going to be our next president? I sure hope not. No more actors, in my opinion. Mimi, great to see you again. Average Joe says, at the end, the RFK supporters thought that the doctor presenting facts was argumentative and ignoring the other side. Exactly what I am talking about, Average Joe. Tishy, thank you. I appreciate you being here. All right, get your final questions in, everybody. Thank you so much for all of the likes and the shares and the gifts and the support. I appreciate all the support that you guys give me. Mr. R says, do you think we should have a veteran as a president again? Yeah, I mean, if you are, I would prefer to have somebody who has served our country in some form, whether that means working for the Children's Defense Fund, whether that means being a community organizer, whether that means serving in the military. I want to see that you have made sacrifices for your country instead of just siphoning money out of American citizens' pockets the way that Donald Trump has. Sophia says, I think Vance is better because he seems to be more conservative than Trump. Sophia, what do you think about J.D. Vance calling Trump Hitler, and now he's going along with everything that Trump says and does? What do you think about that, Sophia? Okay, David says, who has a better shot at the White House, someone with primarily congressional experience or state executive level? It seems like, David, and I'm not sure about this just seems like, what the pollsters are saying. It seems like what people want right now is somebody with no government experience. They view people in government as being corrupted and influenced and already part of the machine. And so being an outsider, the way that Donald Trump is an outsider, was very attractive to people. It's part of the reason why people were Bernie supporters and then they were Trump supporters afterwards, because they viewed Bernie as being outside the traditional system because he's an independent, not a Democrat. So yeah, I think that, and that's arguably one of the things that made Obama such an attractive candidate in 2007, because he had such limited experience in DC. And while people like Clinton and McCain tried to use that against him, it was clearly what Americans wanted. Like he had probably the largest mandates of any president, maybe more than George W. Bush in 2004. I don't remember, but yeah, George W. Bush did not have a supermajority in the Senate in 2004, I don't think. And I'm pretty confident he didn't have one in 2000. So yeah, Obama had the largest mandates in the 2000s. So yeah, change candidate. There you go. Alrighty, let's see here. Did Sophia respond to my question? Your favorite Democrat? I have warned you about comments like that. So please stop it. Okay? I'm asking you again. I don't want you fucking trolling people's social media and then trying to prove that they're hypocrites in my live stream. You know, I'm sure that you and I agree way more politically than Sophia and I agree, but that's just, it's not productive. It's not helping. Sorry, I got a little heated there. Alrighty, David Parasico says, so what leadership experience is going to get someone elected now, post Trump? I have no idea. Like maybe we can get a good progressive leader in there. Yeah, I honestly I have no idea. Maybe the mayor of a progressive city. Yeah, the head of a nonprofit. Maybe somebody who's worked for Obama's foundation or something. I have no idea. Sophia says, actually, I haven't heard about what Vance said about that, so I'll definitely have to look into that. Yeah, before Vance was part of the Trump coalition, he said that Trump was very Hitler-like. And now he is like fully on board with everything that Trump does. I haven't seen any daylight between Trump's policies and J.D. Vance. So yeah, I really love to hear what you think about that. LFR says, if we go by what modern trends show, it'll be a progressive candidate to win for sure. Potentially, but weird shit happens in politics all the time. So yeah, guys, get your final questions in. We are wrapping up. If you would like to support the channel financially, you can, but you don't have to. I know that we all are suffering. We are all suffering financially because of the decisions that Donald Trump and his Republican Party have made. But if you want to, you can. I have a Patreon that you can join for as little as $1 a day. I have a store that you can buy things from. You can send gifts and become super subscribers and super fans on TikTok and Twitch and YouTube. If you're an Amazon Prime subscriber and you subscribe to my Twitch using your account, I get $2 and it costs you nothing. So that is very helpful to me, of course. Your favorite Democrat says, so you don't agree with what I say about Sophia. I think that there are a bunch of different ways in which it is acceptable to be a Christian. And I'm sure that there are some Christian sects that would look at SECTS, not SEX. Some Christian sects that would look at a person partying on the weekends and going, that is not godly. That is not pure. And there are other people that are like, yeah, of course, we have wine with communion. That is partying, dancing. That's the end of Footloose is about that. Your favorite Democrat. The thing that I disagree with is the way that you are attacking her and trying to prove that she is a hypocrite. That seems unproductive to me, and so I would encourage you not to do that any longer. So, sorry, getting off of my moral high horse. Special thank you to my Twitch subscribers, Triska, Lauren, and Kayslo. Special thanks to my TikTok superfans, Susie, Sean, Dean, and Hot Sauce. And special thanks to my patrons, Robert, Shannon, Carmine, and Patrick. Let's see here. Andrew says, if Dems stay on a roll in sweep midterms, what does it take for Republicans to flip that by 2028? That's a really good question. And, the thing with the Republican Party is that their policies are wildly unpopular. And so they rely on other things to win. They rely on both sidesing. They rely on billionaire-funded propaganda. They rely on culture war shit. And they rely on cheating and stealing and lying and campaign finance violations and shit like that. So do I believe that Republicans will somehow convince America that Democrats winning the midterms was the wrong thing to do and that they will then sweep 28? I doubt it. Is it possible that Republicans lie, cheat, and steal their way into victory in 28? Absolutely. And that's the reason why I'm always advocating for people to do the work of trying to stop that going forward. Mr. R says, ingenious. Is that like, are you saying are you calling me ingenious? Are you saying that I'm a genius? Was that a compliment for me, Mr. R? I'm not really sure. I don't know what you're referring to. I don't know what I said that made that comment happen, Voter suppression, exactly. Layers says, do you like socialism? It depends on how you define socialism. Your favorite Democrat says her repost seems so hateful. Okay, well, I'm going to try to convince her to be a less hateful person, your favorite Democrat. And I will do the same to anybody who I think is being more fighty than productive. Okay, so yeah, I define socialism as when the government takes our tax dollars and uses it to buy things that help everybody. So paved roads, public education, the military, the fire departments, all of that is socialism, in my opinion. It is the reason why we call universal health care socialized medicine, because it is the government giving us a health care plan that they pay for with our tax dollars. So yeah, I think we'd use a little more socialism in America. Joe Gonzalez says, so if you don't get what you want, you call it stealing? No, but I think I call stealing. Joe Gonzalez. I will happily go into more detail on that if you would like. Okay. Ghetto Gunfighter says, if it's so unpopular, why did they run the table in 24? There's a lot of reasons, Ghetto Gunfighter, but just based on your profile picture, I do not believe that you actually care about hearing the answer. Prove me wrong. Send me a DM and ask me there, and I will give you all the information that you require. Regular streaming schedule is Monday through Friday, starting around 11:30 a.m. Pacific time. Obviously, we're going to be off for the holidays, but we will be back on December 29th. Back to our regular streaming schedule on December 29th. Schedules are regularly updated on Twitch and on TikTok and on my personal website, so you can always check shit out there. If there are any questions that you guys have that I was not able to get to on this live stream or that come up later, do not hesitate to shoot me a message. I am happy to get in touch. I'm happy to correspond. It is my goal to be a resource for all of you, to be better informed and more involved in politics. And so if there are ways that I can do that, that sending me a DM or an email can accomplish, I want you to do that. I want you guys to use me. I want you to use me, to abuse me, use me until you use me up. Another great way to get in touch is the Discord. There's also a great community of people there that are also fans of this live stream. And there are threads there for recommendations for books and podcasts and great nonprofit organizations that you should all be volunteering your time and money towards. So yeah, join the Discord, send me a message, continue to be fans of the live stream, join the Patreon, come on in, guys. The water is fine. And lastly, just my heartfelt plea for you guys all to do the work, because it is only us doing the work that is going to get us out of the fucking state that we are in. Okay, Hexually Active says, hi, streamer and chat. Did Trump sell weapons to Russia? Latest CIA release, Jimmy Kimmel announcements leaked by the CIA. When the government subsidizes the farmers, it's socialist in its framework. Agree with that. Hexually Actor says, are you a dark comedian, slap comedian, brainy comedian, or other types? I like to think of myself as annoyed and clever. That is how my wife describes my stand-up. Hexually says, great, please do some work concerning the weapon sales of U.S. to Russia with Trump's approval. I have not seen any reporting, Hexually, that that we have sold any weapons to Russia. That would be a massive violation, I believe, of sanctions that we have against Russia. I need to look into that a little bit, Hexually. But yeah, I am. That would be a huge, a massive slap in the face to every American citizen. Okay, Average Joe says, what caused right-leaning voters to trust Trump and his congressional sycophants at face value, but every statement made by a left-leaning voter is questioned relentlessly? Average Joe, I would love to put this. I think that part of this is billionaire and Russian propaganda, hyping up Donald Trump leading into 2015, 2016. I think some of it is the fact that Donald Trump has been Donald Trump his entire fucking life. He was Donald Trump during the 80s. He was Donald Trump on The Apprentice, and he was Donald Trump when he was running for president. And so I think people saw sincerity in that consistency, and then they interpreted his lies as truths based on that. Okay, wait. Rena, excellent block. Rena, absolutely excellent block. I cannot fucking believe. Unbelievable. That is Fucking infuriating. I don't know if you're still here, Sophia, but I just want to formally apologize for that comment. God damn. I fucking called that shit a fucking mile away, man. That is really fucking disappointing, man. Yeah. Yeah. I don't fucking trust that shit. I saw, yeah. Anyways, let's get back in here. Che, hey, I was here last time talking about communism and how I don't like both Democrats. Why are you a Democrat, actually? Excellent question, Che. Lauren said, I'll get to you, Che, in just a second. Lauren says, what do you think about Luriu and the Truth Social merger? I haven't wrapped my head around that one yet, Lauren. I'm sorry about that. Mimi says, what do you think about the new Qatari base going in? Are you talking about the guys that are getting trained in Utah or some shit? Because that's no, Lauren, they had not violated the code yet, but that was literally the thing. That was the thing that went too far. You know what I mean? So yeah, let's get back to Che for a hot second. I gotta go soon, Che. But we'll talk about this for a second. So there are a couple of reasons why I'm a Democrat. Number one being that I think the Democratic Party is actually a good party. Like, if you look at the things that they've accomplished just in my lifetime, you know, the 90s, the 2000s, the 2010s, the 2020s, there are some great wins there. You know, the Affordable Care Act, the Inflation Reduction Act, the PACT Act, the CHIPS Act, actually acknowledging climate change is a real fucking thing. Blue states tend to have a higher quality of life than red states, you know, shit like that. Yeah, you know, I think that they have a good history. They have good outcomes, not perfect, of course. And they have a good platform. Like, I agree with their platform. It doesn't always go as far to the left as I want it to go, but it's good, you know? And I can recognize that amongst the Democratic Party, it's a big tent. And so not everybody agrees with me. And so I can allow for the Democratic platform to be a little more centrist than I would care for. I also am a Democrat because I am staunchly against the Republican Party. They have terrible outcomes. They have a terrible history. They have terrible incentive structure. Their platform is terrible. Their governing history is terrible. The politicians are terrible. And so I want to vote for the party that has the best chance of beating the Republicans. And that is always going to be Democrats until we have ranked choice voting. And we're not going to have ranked choice voting so long as Republicans are out there actively trying to make it illegal. So even if I only wanted to vote for Democrat, even if I only voted for Democrats because I wanted there to be, let me rephrase that. It makes sense to vote for Democrats even if you don't like them, because they are able to usher in a new type of American government where other parties will have a fighting chance instead of just being spoiler candidates. Yeah, you know, that's generally it. I believe in the project of America being multicultural and multiracial and being a diverse melting pot, and the Democratic Party reflects that. And that's the reason why it has people from the far left and the center left, and even some people who other people might call like a soft Republican. You know, people like Joe Manchin and Christian Sinema were once Democrats, and I think it was a stronger party having them in them, even though I am infuriated with the fact that they made things so much harder for the Biden administration than they had to be. Alrighty. Yeah, Chase says lesser evil won't work forever. Eventually the people will decide between barbarism and revolution. Yeah, I completely agree with that, Che. But here's the thing. We have never tried that. We have never tried giving the Democratic Party enough power to actually be the party that they can be. Because they win elections and then they lose elections. And then they win elections and then they lose elections. And even when they win elections, they almost never have enough power to actually do the big things that they want to do. And so what is that telling the Democratic Party? Is it telling them that the country is further to the left than them because sometimes Republicans will win? To me, the message that we're saying to the Democratic Party is you are too far to the left. And that's why we sometimes vote for Republicans. So I say, why don't we try voting for the lesser of two evils? Why don't we try giving the Democrats more than just, you know, 20 months of a majority to actually do some fucking good? Let's recognize that when we don't vote for the lesser of two evils, we are allowing the greater of two evils to come to power. Let's see what happens when we let the Democrats govern. Because we haven't done that so far. We have not done that so far. Jay says, so the Democrats need more time, like 2 terms? Yes, but also it can't just be a president. It has to be Congress. We have to give them Congress for more than just 8 months, for more than just a year and a half. When we give them Congress, we can't just give them a 0-seat majority like they had in 2020. All right, guys, let's see here. I am so happy for all of you guys. I'm so thankful for all of you guys. I hope that everybody has a happy holiday. And Sophia, I hope you have a Merry Christmas. I wonder if anybody's going to get that joke. Be good to each other, everybody. Enjoy the holidays. Be good to yourselves. Never forget that self-care is part of the work. Do the work. And I will see you guys in a week and a half. Same bat time, same bat channel. Discord link is in my bio. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye. Goodbye, goodbye, goodbye.